Awesome. Okay, I think we should have pretty much everyone coming in. Maybe give it like 2 more seconds. Sweet. Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to this workshop. We have Peter here from Sequence, which is super exciting. We will let him take it away in just 2 seconds, but just wanted to note we'll do Q&A at the end. So feel free to just throw all your questions into the chat and stick around so we can get those answered at the end of the session. And yeah, Peter, feel free to start whenever you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone, for spending your Saturday afternoon with me. It's fun to do this live on ETHGlobal. So thanks for hosting us. Yeah, my name is Peter Kieltyka. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Horizon. And today I'm going to be sharing with you an open Web3 gaming stack we built for Ethereum during the creation of Skyweaver, and it kind of emerged the platform Sequence. So interestingly, Horizon, for some of you who may or may not know, we actually were established back in 2017. Really to kind of for the purpose of exploring and adventuring through Web3 and to do something really cool and creative and make a video game. And the video game we wanted to make was Skyweaver, a trading card game where you can actually, the actual cards themselves are virtual assets on chain and you could trade them and do all sorts of cool stuff with it. As we want to make this a product for normal people and normal gamers, as I'm sure, other builders here on the call are looking to do the very same thing, right? How do you use this crazy Web3 technology with in traditional video games, and what does it mean and what changes? And actually it's a whole lot, right? When we started back in 2017, it was really raw, low-level primitives, really. So we had to build everything from scratch, and that was really cool because it helped build a lot of wonderful intuitions for us and a lot of learnings that we're really excited to share with you with Sequence. So hopefully you guys can get some great use out of that. Something that really inspires us, and it's kind of a beacon of that we focus on, is looking at this new dimension of gaming, right? Web3 kind of in this era emerging something entirely new where, you have digital worlds, but they now have these physical like world properties, right? You have the ownership and, how you can kind of gamify with all these. It's like, something that's digital but feels real and tangible. And you have this deep, crazy connection with this controller, but it's, it's really taking you to this new place. So it's something that's really inspiring us. This is actually a pretty cool piece of artwork that we actually had commissioned back in 2018, early 2018, for us to kind of, convey this imagery and just this, the potency of this connection and experience. And as we all kind of know, it's, video games are huge. They've had virtual items for decades. But the real question, of course, is, well, what does blockchain do that's new? What can you do that's new, and what changes? That's really important to consider, because it's really a big factor in what you actually design and how you construct things, right? So we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff today. Kind of the foundational, again, at a primitive level, what's introduced that's new is the idea of open and standardized protocols for virtual assets or virtual items, right? Which enables open economies and networks. That's, thank you to Ethereum for providing that to us. We can think of it like the web, the World Wide Web, and that's why we're kind of references Web3, because it's really, open protocols that are standardized, that are really belong to no one, that are just widely adopted and, create interoperability and users, and suddenly you get these networks that kind of connect together and do more cool things, right? Open tools, open economies of things moving across and having, better connections between them, one economy kind of exiting or liquidating and moving to another economy, or a token item that you create in your contract suddenly can be rendered on a completely different property that you never even talked to, or a marketplace. Suddenly you have a token contract and it could be traded on all the marketplaces, right? Really cool stuff, right? The developer tools that exist, even the ones I'll share with you today, really are the developer tools that we've kind of built on, to connect with the ecosystem at large. But of course, you can bring your own tools as well. It's all standardized. These are the wonderful things around open protocols as we kind of know them on the web. So, but of course, so we have these new open systems, and from a gaming economy perspective, in traditional video games, a lot of these gaming economies are closed economies. They're just like this kind of walled garden with proprietary systems and representation of virtual items and no marketplaces whatsoever. So when you start saying, hey, now you can own, you can trade to a player, it really offers some really interesting benefits. It offers a whole new set of player incentives in that video game and the way they kind of behave, right? It changes kind of the economic and the social behavior. And for a developer, it creates an entirely new ability and new monetization possibilities, new ways that you can monetize your platform and your content, which is really cool. And how these things kind of, again, some of the tools or the properties that come out of this are things like ownership, trade, right? So you can own an item, you can trade an item, and you have the interoperability of markets, which is really, really a powerful idea, right? Where, again, many different markets can actually host that your virtual good. You can have gamification concepts and constructions like play to earn. You can have really interesting co-creation and mod, I think, capabilities of, again, given that these are open, kind of a virtual item represented as a data structure that's an open format, and that people kind of co-collaborating to build something in kind of a shared network. There's all these crazy possibilities. I think we haven't yet to even scratch the surface as an ecosystem. There's a lot more talk about like things like guild DAOs, which are kind of interesting, where the community, as stakeholders that are influencing different parts of the ecosystem is also really quite fascinating. So these are all possible, and more, as I'm sure we all kind of discover as adventurers in this new dimension of Web3 gaming, and what's really possible. And so, coming to this workshop, and even for us back in 2017, it's like, well, we got this really primitive, state machine, blockchain, low-level, slow database that's expensive. How do you go from that to making full-fledged, video game experiences that, is used by millions of people that everyone understands, and creates these open economies? And this is of course the challenge. So kind of looking now today, this is what we've ended up creating, right? This is what, from all of our ideas and all the work, this is kind of, through the things what I'm going to show you today is actually a lot of the internals of Skyweaver, especially from the blockchain architecture of it. And this is kind of the end result. So yeah, you can go to actually skyweaver.net, www.skyweaver.net. You can play right in your web browser. You can play on a Windows, Mac, Linux, iPhone, Android, iPad, across all the platforms. Free to play, really cool. It's a trading card game, kind of like a Magic and like a Hearthstone. And I'll talk a bit more about it. But yeah, these are just some screenshots. And yeah, so this is kind of in the player menu when you're switching your game modes. This is the actual gameplay. So as you can imagine, we have these actual cards are like physical cards, but they're on chain, so they're digital, and you can own them and you can trade them with one another. We have up to 510 different cards. The gameplay is actually a 1 versus 1 multiplayer turn-based strategy video game. So you're going to you're going to assemble a deck of around 30 cards, and you battle the opponent. Whoever kind of takes the hero down, you win, right? And there's this interesting kind of economic like leaderboard and reward system that really you're not going to cover today. It's kind of a different aspect of the Skyweaver economy. We're going to talk a little bit more about the architecture to construct these video games that you can be played. But it's really, really wonderful game, and really proud of all the crazy work we did. And it's been awesome. It's been a fun ride, and it's still tons of wonderful things in the future that we're going to be evolving this game. And yeah, this is a marketplace that's built into Skyweaver. So obviously, part of an open economy is the crux of an economy is the ability to trade. So it's very important that the experience for and especially for a trading card game, right? How can you trade cards without a market to do so? And you can imagine there are in a market such, or video games such as Skyweaver, you can have there's different demand for different cards. Some are more sought after than others, and there's different prices for some of these, and there might even be a varying supply of them, emerging out of a variety of different properties. But what's really important in any case is the idea of buying and selling these assets for gamers should be easy, such that they can trade these things quite quickly. This is just for fun. I wanted to show you guys what Skyweaver cover page used to look like back in 2018, and this is actually what the game looked like back in 2018. And now you know what the game looks like, and it's even I saw some of the animations the team was showing me yesterday. Is super crazy and cool, like shocking. So again, back from thinking of 2017 when we had started this project, back in my kitchen table, 5 of us, in Toronto, and by the way, now we're 45 people across 15 countries. What we wanted to set out to do, was make our lives extremely difficult, right? We wanted to really make our lives really hard for 4 years, right? Because we wanted to build something really innovative, something never done before, and we wanted to do it right? So quite simply, we wanted to build a video game that's powered by blockchain that our friends could enjoy, right? Our friends who are not blockchain or computer scientists, and they can have a great experience playing Skyweaver. And of course, no knowledge required. And we wanted to make it free to play. We didn't want to have anyone to require having Ethereum or some kind of token in order to be able to onboard into the video game. Right? It's just, again, the same purity of what you expect in a video game, but with blockchain kind of components, with open, standards and economies and things like this. So you get to own your virtual items. You can own publicly. You can open, trade openly on different public blockchain networks, whatever those may be. In fact, it's interesting. Like the idea of a virtual good can be decoupled from the blockchain network in of itself, right? Very much so, which is kind of more crazy meta stuff, but it's where it is. And of course, we want to, again, have an economy that's built entirely on open protocols and standards. I keep going back to that. We wanted to, very early on, by February of 2018, because we really went full hog on this January 2018, but 2017 was the kind of the conception of the whole thing. And by February, we realized very quickly, we needed a really good wallet experience that a gamer could be familiar with and use. This is kind of part and parcel of being able to access these virtual worlds. And of course, we don't want users to have to, again, back to, you don't need ETH, you don't have to worry about gas, because these are huge friction points. This is not what, my friends who are now computer scientists could do. It's not a thing. They could do it, but it's, again, it's, you get the point. What's also really important with these systems is to stay compliant with laws and regulations, right? I think, having a really fair economy that's really thoughtful, isn't predatory in its design, doesn't exploit users because of a lack of knowledge or some kind of, a trick of a system, again, and also being a non-custodial design is also really important, right? And so all these many different factors, it was obviously extremely important for us to operate in extremely high integrity, such that we would be very compliant with regulations and laws, because we saw this for the long term. This wasn't us. It's for the very reason why after 4 years, we've never actually done a pre-mine or an ICO or any of the sort, or selling booster packs or anything like this, because again, it fundamentally didn't agree with our vision for what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something pure and better. Of course, looking at, similar to your video games, I'd urge you to stay compliant. It's a good idea. But what's, back to, and build really robust economies that are really thoughtful to users, because again, that's going to serve you very well and pay dividends in the future. But yeah, back to kind of like when you're thinking of a video game, well, what belongs on chain, what belongs off chain, right? Clearly, we knew we wanted to put these assets on chain. That was all kind of part and parcel of it. And we knew the gameplay it's not realistic for it to be on chain. Doesn't make any sense. So off chain gameplay. So I'm going to try to speed up a little bit because there's still a lot of content here. We're 12 minutes and 30 seconds in. So this is kind of the high level macro view of the Skyweaver architecture, some of the internals. This kind of summarizes it pretty well. On the left-hand side in the gray, you can see API, web app, game state, matchmakers, game servers, mobile app, desktop app. These are kind of things that would be, could be similar properties to any video games that you're creating. You have a back end, you have a front end, you have a video game, you have game state, da-da-da. We'll save that for another time. Really cool stuff. And on the right-hand side, these are properties that relate to kind of the blockchain components that are integrated into Skyweaver. So of course we have the 1155 token contract, how you actually represent your goods on chain. We have the marketplace, which is important. We use a set of, because we're built on Ethereum, we have ETHJS and Sequence.js on how we interface with the Ethereum compatible networks. We have Go Sequence, which we like to write our servers in Go. So when we are interfacing, we like to have the client library to communicate in Go. We are in fact deployed on the Polygon network, which is really cool because it's an Ethereum compatible network. So we have that. We have a Sequence meta transaction relayer. It lets us do really fancy stuff around, gas abstraction, and simplifies a lot of gas interactions and firing for getting transactions and worrying about finality and all these cool things. So we're not actually going to talk about, but I will just say that there's another talk I gave called Road to Web3, Building Seamless User Experiences for Web3. And I would, recommend you guys check that out. It goes really deep into like Sequence wallet and stuff. So it touches on a bunch more things. And of course we have our docs we'll cover. The other big component of, again, back to the blockchain stuff is the sequence index and metadata. Of course, you have these assets on chain, but how do you query the blockchain in such that it's in an efficient way so you can understand what's kind of happening inside of there? And of course, back to the Sequence wallet, or a wallet in general, of course, you need a wallet to be able to access, for users to be able to access these systems in an easy way. So this is kind of it. And so we're going to be focusing on the blockchain components because the left-hand side could be really anything. In the case of Skyweaver, it is an HTML5 based video game. You can check out our GitHub, /Horizon-Games. That's a Horizon one. We also have github.com/0xsequence, which is the kind of open, sequence stack of other things. So we kind of like to split them up, and when we designed Skyweaver, we were extremely intentional because we saw this great opportunity. We do love open source. I do a lot personally. A lot of our team does. We take it as a great honor to be able to kind of contribute something to the ecosystem and push it forward and innovate, do something really fun. So we saw that opportunity back in 2018. We're very intentional about all of these design things to say, you know what, we're gonna make sure we separate these things so that, Skyweaver is really a consumer as a third party to Sequence. There's no like special knowledge of it, right? So coming down to this kind of the Sequence stack, as I kind of keep going on about virtual items, it's really kind of the core focal point, right? It's the actual, the item contracts themselves are what you're kind of building around. So we have actually my colleague, Philippe Cassagoy, an amazing person and visionary, had co-created the ERC 1155 token contract. And you can kind of see the link here. It's used by Skyweaver, of course, it's used by OpenSea, it's used by many different projects. It was, co-authored by also Engine and Sandbox and other projects. And Philippe definitely played a big role there too. And we have our implementation of our contracts, which are really fancy and highly efficient. They're some of the most gas efficient contracts you can get out there. They've been monitored multiple times. Then, they're really great. We have lots of other cool features to talk about. Then, of course, another cool thing we created was something called the Nifty Swap protocol. And it's a decentralized exchange for a virtual item with the ability to be able to swap instantly your digital goods. So we'll touch on that later. So again, tokenization of items, the ability to trade items very easily. And something that's also interesting is, of course, as you're building your properties, well, how do you monetize some of these things across these networks? And so what's emerged is this royalty standard called 2981. We'll talk a little bit about it as well, but the Sequence contracts for both 1155 and Nifty Swap already adhere and implement this interface such that you'll already be able to generate a royalty by you leveraging these things and setting it. Another big property, of course, is the blockchain indexer and token metadata APIs. This is going to simplify development for you a whole lot. As you can imagine, like any any database, right? As a blockchain is of a type, you always have, if you're going to be querying data, you need to worry about your indexes, right? So that you can query things efficiently. It's no different here. And of course, there's a lot of token metadata that isn't on chain, so you have to be able to kind of query that stuff. And there's tons and tons of cool goodies. And I'm going to switch gears to sitting down, but tons more goodies on our GitHub and our docs. So leave it at that. What I would kind of this slide, what I wanted to kind of the point I wanted to make, which is I find really exciting about Web3 is, obviously we're focused on Ethereum as, for many reasons. I won't digress right now. But you can target one chain, and anything that's Ethereum compatible, your application it'll just work. And so will Sequence. And so will the contracts and everything. They'll just be compatible. So that's really interesting. So, what I would say is I look at Ethereum no longer as a single network. When I say Ethereum, I mean, I'm also referring to Polygon and Arbitrum and Optimism and others, right? Because they're all Ethereum. They're part of the, the network as an ecosystem where, and the goal of Sequence and the tools that we've created is to ultimately, for an end user, for everything to feel like one, right? Just like you get on the web browser, you have a web server, or you have a web page or a different framework. Everything just renders. It doesn't matter what server, what your hosting provider is. Essentially, it's almost, it almost comes down to that in some levels, but a little bit more fancy than that. But yeah. So going back to that kind of point, but also that other tools that are compatible with these systems are also compatible with Sequence, or also compatible with your product. So you can really welcome a whole slew of crazy amounts of products and developer tools to help you, construct your systems, which is so fun. And so, yeah, so I wanted to also, the next part of it I wanted to share with you is, well, the wallet experience, right? So Sequence as a wallet is really designed to make Web3 simple, fun, and accessible for everyone. So, I think that sums it up pretty well. And so the wallet, as I mentioned, is really the core interface to allow you to access these blockchain networks, right? It's your interface. It's how you can log in and sign up and sign transactions and sign messages and do things that interact with these open systems, improve validity and stuff. So the wallet, again, being very core, we went and we spent years and years actually iterating and making multiple versions. And we'd like to now, we boldly claim, Sequence wallet as the smartest wallet on Web3. And for many reasons. And one of those is that it's actually a smart contract-based wallet for Ethereum compatible networks. So versus, a traditional single key account, as you get in MetaMask and others, a Sequence wallet is actually a multi-key system, right? Your account is represented as a smart contract that can be controlled by a number of different keys that you construct through the use as you kind of sign in, per device and so forth. And you can actually add other recovery keys and other security keys. There's more information obviously on the Sequence app. You can access it. And of course, docs.sequence.build. And back to the road to Web3 talk I gave, it goes in a lot of depth. So that kind of, I think that's a better place for that. The source code is licensed by Apache 2. And of course, it adheres to open standards. It's compatible with anything on Web3, any contract. It has a really nice integration with allowing users to sign in with their social and their email. We benefit from this cool product called Web3 Auth, as to help us devise one of our signing keys as one of the many of the smart contract wallet. It's very flexible integration. You don't have to install anything. It works on mobile, it works everywhere. It has beautiful NFT integration. So if you do receive an NFT or your user receives an NFT, it'll just immediately show up. There is this really cool gas abstraction. So the idea for a user to think about, like, what is gas? How should I price it? Is it going to be fast? And canceling it, all these things, users don't have to think about that. Or perhaps you're on Polygon, you have to pay your gas fees in Matic. Well, how do you do that? So again, these are all abstracted. Again, how do you let users from the traditional fiat worlds actually go and spend money? So these are really important fiat on-ramps. And the goal of Sequence is really to create in a non-custodial, self-custodial way, a 10x user experience with improving security and extending the capabilities of Ethereum. And that's what it does. So when we think about the Web3 gaming and metaverse stack, as we're kind of referring to, we kind of break it down at a high level, as we're talking about lots of sorts of stuff, kind of like this, right? As a bit of a summary. We've got our smart contracts of our items. So in terms of the smart contracts that you can really get really far with just using a standard library set of contracts. You don't have to program your own smart contracts, right? It sounds crazy to say that, but you don't have to, right? You can actually leverage a standard library of contracts like ours or others, and you can integrate them to represent your virtual items. You can have, integrating with royalties, really cool. And you can have there's different market protocols like Nifty Swap and 0x protocol work very well. And of course, you're going to need to figure out, what network you want to target, having a different, node provider. And there's a bunch of different blockchain infrastructure services, such as the Sequence Index or metadata relayer. And there's other providers out there in the world too that offer, other services. I'm kind of partial to ours for many reasons, but yeah, feel free to explore and intersect all of these Web3 tools together. And of course, the wallet experience for a seamless experience is very important for players. So starting off, as you guys are working on your games, hope that gives you a bit of a good meta high-level view. One thing that's really important, again, is the first place to think about is your items, right? So now when you're thinking about your items, you're going to say, okay, well, what contract should I use, right? Am I doing an ERC20, 721, 1155? What's the difference, right? So first off, many of you may know, but I'll just give you a recap. So a lot of people don't. So the ERC20 is a fungible token standard. The idea it's a single token and you can have any number of it, right? The 721, it's a non-fungible token standard where you can have any number of tokens, but you can actually have only a quantity of one ever, right? And then the 1155, the multi-token standard, is one such that you can have n number of tokens. So again, any number of tokens, and you can have m number quantity per token. So you could say of a Skyweaver card, you can have token ID 1, and you can say, well, there's 10 of it, or there's 100 of it, or there's 10,000 of it, and so forth. There's only one of it, right? So the 1155, which of course I'm a big advocate of as well. I find it has, we'll talk about, it has really interesting properties, is extremely well suited for video gaming and a lot of different things actually. And then what you can actually do, interestingly, with the 1155 is you can actually, it's like a superset of the 20 and the 721. You can represent a 20 in 1155 contract, and you can represent a 721 in 1155 contract as well. You can actually wrap these things, and a lot of people are doing that in the ecosystem. So there's a lot of other considerations, batch transfer, more efficient price discovery, right? For when your markets can be, you can kind of know, like if you have a Skyweaver card, if that card is just sold for $10, you got to imagine, well, that's where the price is. That's the general market price for that very same card that a number of people are holding, and it makes markets work a lot more efficiently, and the data structures on chain as well are very inexpensive as a result. That's kind of, hopefully that gets you kind of started. Obviously, I'm going to advocate for the 1155 for a variety of reasons, but feel free to combine your application with a multitude of these things. Nothing stops you from using a combination, but again, I don't see a huge point in it, but it's certainly happy to open for discussion if anyone would like. And some bedtime reading for everyone. There's an article from our director of product, Philippe Casseguay, back in September 2018, around the time, devising the 1155 standard. And it's Here Be Dragons going beyond ERC 20 and ERC 721 to reduce gas costs by 80%, which is true. And you can check out the article on our Horizon Games Medium, and it goes into kind of all the analysis. And that's not the gas cost, which is amazing, is certainly not the only reason, not even the reason I'm advocating for the use of it. The next thing, so again, you're going to be thinking about your token contract. You're going to have to deploy your token contract. I wanted just to mention, on this page as well, that these are different links to, just to, again, for you to explore. Highly recommend also the Open Zeppelin work as a standard library of contracts. They're excellent. And if you are, here are kind of references to different token contracts. So I don't write your own contract, use ones that are vetted, audited, and use. And we have the sequence and contract for 1155 down here as well. So you can kind of check them out. And so you'll have to deploy your contract. And I'm not going to go into that here today, but there's lots of resources out there how to do that. And feel free to come on our Discord, discord.gg/sequence if you need some help. The next kind of part when you're thinking about your virtual items is, of course, token metadata. The 721s and the 1155s have token metadata capability, and they're kind of part of they're kind of a standard extension. And you can kind of go in the EIP and read all about it. And I'm kind of just taking a bit of a screenshot here for you guys. There's a single method that's added. It's called a URI function. It's a read function. If you pass it a token ID, it's going to return to you a string where you can go find that metadata off chain. So metadata for these tokens is actually represented off chain. Some of you may or may not know. And you can kind of go and, as an example, so I'm going to kind of take you through an example for an 1155 token contract that we use in Skyweaver. So you can go look at our contracts, GitHub.com, Horizon Games, Skyweaver-contracts, it's open source. And when you look at the source code, you're actually going to see it's extremely small, especially when you click on tokens and you look at how it's represented. And the reason for that is because it really extends, it just kind of inherits with some basic kind of like accessibility and other little things of the sequence 1155 contracts. So that's the way I'd recommend, that's the extent I'd recommend. You can find, but feel free to explore. But again, crawl, walk, run is kind of what I would suggest. So the Polygon mainnet contract, you can actually see the Skyweaver contract here. You can click through it. A cool little pro tip is if I'm just using the Polygon scan, which is using the Etherscan stuff. If you click into here, click on read, I kind of take a screenshot here. You scroll down, you can see a URI function. If you just put in number 1 query, boom, it returns you the kind of where you can find, query that metadata. So it's important to look at this because, of course, this is something you want to incorporate. You want to make sure you're constructing, and this is how other products in the ecosystem are traversing this information. So you want to make sure yours is available and represented in a similar structure, so that you're going to just show up automatically in wallets and exchanges and everything. It just plugs and plays, right? So you want to adhere to the contracts and the protocols. This is an example when you query this metadata of the URI. This is what you're going to get. Boom. This is again standard kind of functions, and from this, again, wallets and other systems and indexers will be able to represent render your system really nice. The next thing we're going to look at really quickly, and I'm going through this fast. This is a lot of content, and almost 2 minutes, and this presentation will be over. But get more content than that, so we'll see. Monetizing your items is important. So check out this royalty standard 2981. Very fascinating, and it lets you kind of represent. Essentially, what it allows is for you to set a certain royalty on your token contract, such as let's say 2.5%. And anytime your items are traded on any exchange that adheres and respects the 2981, you will receive 2.5% to the receiver account, which is really cool. So really great standard. Nifty Swap, and so there's a lot more there, but want to just kind of have you guys explore that. Nifty Swap, it's a fully decentralized exchange for swapping 1155s. So think of like Uniswap for NFTs. And why it's very interesting is because it creates this wonderful experience, like kind of e-commerce like experience. You just go click, 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 buy, and the market price is already set on chain. All the liquidity is on chain. The prices have each kind of like a bonding curve based system, and this also goes for sellers, right? As a result, since all liquidity on both sides of the market exist on chain, a seller can also go and just click around and instantly create liquidity. So a seller can always sell, which is very, very fascinating, very novel. Most people don't even have any clue about this protocol, but we're really slowly emerging it, and it's used within Skyweaver. So you can see it here. If you go to Skyweaver and go to the market, you can kind of see, you can click around. We like to do things in USDC to the Skyweaver good. So these are like, silver cards. You can see this card is worth $1.80 or, 1.85 USDC, 1.8 USDC. And that's typical of our design for Skyweaver, where we like to see silver cards kind of hover around the 2 USDC mark, because we want those to be financially accessible. Whereas the gold markets are a little bit more, that's where the kind of the rare cards go. And anyways, so you can click here. This is kind of interesting that you can click on buy or sell. It kind of functions the same. And when you sell, this kind of window pops up. And again, you can instantly click and sell and immediately liquidate. There is no order book. There's no auction system here. It's entirely just, instant liquidity. So it's something really new. There we have, I mentioned kind of the sequence index or metadata APIs. This is, again, the ability to query, for example, how do you list all the items in a wallet? How do you display the history? How do you render beautifully, these NFTs? And being able to query as simple as saying, hey, what's the balance? How much of a certain token do I have? How much USDC do I have? Or what are the different cards that I have? Or what's the quantity of these different items that I have as well? And what's the history of which occurred? And so, yeah, we built this system. It's really cool. You can kind of follow the links down here. If you come to us on the Discord, we can kind of point you in the right direction. It's similar to the graph, but it's in terms of concepts, so maybe an analogy to, but it's very different design, different construction in that the sequence indexer actually indexes an entire blockchain, the whole thing, every single token, every single ERC20, every single 720 on every single F55. We don't even need a contract registry. We can traverse and discover any single contract, and we do this in a single block time. So you send something, it gets mined, we immediately have it. And if things actually get reorganized, because that does happen on blockchains, it's actually going to adhere for that as well. So it's really cool to be able to boom, query a bunch of data in a single call. So kind of what's next for you, that's kind of the quick workshop, the quick kind of macro view. Hope that helps. And you have to choose your network still. How you deploy contracts on a network. You have to be really thoughtful about your game design, considering that, okay, there was what was previously a closed system is now an open system. What if now suddenly you're having a secondary market versus, typically in video games, you have the primary market. How do you think about scarcity versus accessibility, right? On one hand, you want things to be scarce, so they're like collector's items, but on the other hand, you don't want to, you want them to be accessible, so they're fun. You don't want to be able to hide them from your game, so they're only in the hands of a few people, or maybe people who don't play the game, which ultimately helps you avoid pay to win, payment rails. Here are some resources for you all. And yeah, our Discord, like I said, discord.gg/sequence. Check out some of the demos. You can see my workshop if you just YouTube it, and somehow made it here in just over the time. But we're also hiring, and please, reach out at horizon.io.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Peter. So we just have 2 quick questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
Michael wants to know, can they use the Sequence wallet with React Native?
Yes, you can.
And then Thomas would like to know if there's any plans to move the metadata to IPFS.
So for Skyweaver, I guess I think if you saw on the slide, so the sequence indexer or the contracts, we support IPFS and Arweave and HTTPS, so it doesn't really matter. In your case, you can use whatever you want. Everything will just work. We support all protocols. For Skyweaver, we probably will move it to Arweave. I'm a little bit more of a fan of that system. But to be quite honest, I think for this current version, I think you're good to kind of iterate and keeping it on S3, for instance, just to kind of work things kind of quickly. And then as I do, again, love Arweave, I think there's still some work that they need to do as it relates to distributed access to the data.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, thanks so much. Skyweaver looks super cool. And yeah, any other questions you guys might have, hit up the Discord, and yeah, they're hiring. So cool. Thanks so much, Peter. And thanks everyone for joining.